My name is Bonnie. I'm 38 years old, and I live with my husband, Eli, in a quiet apartment on the edge of Portland, Oregon. We chose a life with no kids, no chaos, and no obligation to please anyone but ourselves. Some people call that selfish. I call it peace. I grew up in a family where loudness was the default setting, where being heard meant raising your voice, and calm was mistaken for coldness. My family was always a whirlwind. My mom, my dad, and my two older sisters, Harper, the visionary, who never finishes what she starts, and Tina, the exhausted mom of three married to a man who thinks being a father ends at conception. We were never close. But my mom, emotional as ever, constantly tries to pull me back in with lines like, "You have to be there, Bonnie. Family means showing up." This time, it was a summer barbecue. I wasn't planning to go. I had told Eli as much the night before. But then, at 7 a.m., Mom called, her voice a mix of guilt and excitement. "Everyone's coming. It'll feel so lonely without you." Eli looked up from his coffee and gave me that small, quiet shrug. And so, not wanting to disappoint her again, I said yes, just for a little while. The moment we pulled up to my parents' house, I wanted to turn the car around. The backyard was packed, more than 20 people, kids screaming, adults clutching red plastic cups, and the heavy smell of smoke and beer hanging in the July air. Harper and Tina were already there, margaritas in hand, laughing a little too loudly. "Oh, wow, she made it," Harper called, wobbling over in wedge heels. "Bonnie, I thought you were off negotiating global deals or running your empire or something." She gave a dramatic wink. I clenched my jaw and smiled through it. Eli took my hand and guided me toward my dad, who was half submerged in the backyard hot tub, looking like he wanted to disappear. "You made it," he said simply, handing me a cold water bottle from the cooler beside him. We tried to blend in, talking to neighbors and pretending everything was fine, but the entire afternoon felt like walking through a minefield. Half laughs, loaded questions. "So, no kids yet? Still traveling? Must be nice not having to deal with diapers." I smiled, nodded, and kept glancing at my watch. It wasn't a celebration. It was an interrogation dressed as a cookout, and it was only going to get worse. The turning point came faster than I expected. 3 of my nieces and nephews, ages 7 to 10, were running wild, completely unsupervised. At one point, they charged toward an older guest standing near the edge of the pool. "13 push!" one of them shouted, and they lunged. The woman stumbled, nearly falling in, managing to grab the railing just in time. She was soaked, humiliated, and left without a word. No one apologized. Before I could process what happened, the kids turned their attention to me. I caught the movement in the corner of my eye and stepped aside. They slipped, tumbling straight into the water. Eli burst out laughing. A few others chuckled, but then Harper screamed, "Bonnie, why didn't you catch them? They could have drowned." I froze. No one asked why the kids were sprinting near the pool. No one thanked me for preventing a worse accident. All I got were glares, slurred accusations, and the kind of silence that suffocates more than screams. I stood there, soaking in the absurdity of it all, blamed for protecting myself, punished for not playing the babysitter. And I realized this wasn't just an uncomfortable afternoon. It was a snapshot of how my family had always treated me. On the drive home, I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Eli sat beside me in silence, staring out the window. He didn't need to say anything. I knew he was just as drained. That so-called family fun my mother always described had never really existed. It was just noise, covering judgment, jealousy, and blame. Ever since I earned my MBA and landed a position at one of Portland's top finance firms, things had shifted. My life took a different shape, one my sisters didn't recognize, and maybe never forgave. At 30, I bought my first apartment. At 34, I met Eli, a quiet, grounded structural engineer who respected every decision I made. We didn't rush marriage, we didn't want kids, we traveled, we kept our lives private. But even silence didn't protect us. Anytime we posted a photo from Iceland or New Mexico, Harper would comment, "Must be nice not to worry about babysitters." Tina would chime in with, Only people without kids get to live like that. I'd smile, but I didn't laugh, because beneath the jokes was something sharp, like I had something they once dreamed of, but lost. And no matter what I did, I was always the outsider, even in my own family. 2 years ago, after a quiet weekend trip to Ashford, I bought a small cabin tucked in the forest, snow-covered in winter, kissed by golden light in fall. It was my sanctuary. But I didn't put it under my name. I knew if I did, there would be questions, accusations, so I asked my parents to hold the title. A future retirement gift, I said. They agreed. I paid for everything, the purchase, the taxes, the maintenance, and for a while it worked. Until one night, scrolling through social media, I saw it. A photo of my cabin, hashtagged @ Hidden Ashford Retreat, captioned, "Beautiful stay hosted by Harper. Highly recommend." I stared at the screen, convinced it had to be a mistake, but it wasn't. Over the next few weeks, I watched reviews pile up on Airbnb, glowing comments, booking links, even seasonal price adjustments. Harper had been renting out my cabin for months, pocketing thousands, without saying a word. And Tina? She wasn't innocent either. Eli and I stopped by one afternoon to check the heating before winter, only to find strangers grilling on the porch. "We're friends of Tina," they said casually. "She told us to make ourselves at home." I didn't say a word then, but something in me began to harden. 3 days after the barbecue, my phone lit up with a stream of messages. First from Harper. "You're so selfish. Just because you chose not to have kids doesn't mean you're better than us." Then Tina. "We're raising families while you're off enjoying life. That cabin should have been for all of us, not just your little escape." Even their husbands joined in. Jason, Harper's husband, sent a text that chilled me. "If I'd known you'd pull this stunt, I wouldn't have left the gate unlocked." Was it a threat? A mistake? I didn't care. I blocked them all. Then came the call from my mother. "Bonnie, we need a family meeting. No kids. Just us. Please come." I didn't want to, but I said yes. Not for them, but for myself. That Friday evening, we gathered in my parents' living room. Harper and Tina sat stiff and cold, their husbands silent and unwelcoming. My mother opened the conversation with forced calm. "There's been tension. We just want to clear the air." I looked around the room and exhaled slowly. This wasn't about clearing the air. It was about control. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to push back. I didn't wait for more polite small talk. "I know you've been renting out the cabin," I said flatly. "I have the listings, the reviews, even video footage. Starting today, no one uses that property without my written permission." Tina jumped up. "I didn't make any money. I just let a few friends borrow it." "Enough," Harper cut in. But she didn't look at me. She turned to Mom. "Fine, I listed it. A few times, but it was for the kids' tuition. And anyway, the house is under Mom and Dad's name. It's not even legally Bonnie's." I looked her in the eye. "I've paid every mortgage bill, every tax, every repair. Mom and Dad only hold the title for paperwork convenience. I have every document needed to transfer ownership. Right now, if I want." The room went quiet. Then Dad, who hadn't spoken at all, finally did. "The cabin was bought by Bonnie. Your mom and I just helped keep it off the radar. From now on, it's hers. Completely." For a moment, no one moved. Then Harper exhaled like something inside her cracked. "Fine, don't share the cabin, but at least help us with tuition. You have money. No kids. You should help." And that's when I snapped. "You think I should pay for your life choices," I said, my voice cold. "Because I don't have children? Because I worked hard and lived frugally?" Tina chimed in, arms folded. "We're not asking for much, just support for the family." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Family isn't a reason to exploit someone. It's not a weapon. And I don't owe anyone in this room a dime." Jason rolled his eyes. "You've always thought you were better than the rest of us." "I never said that," I replied. "But if taking care of myself means you feel inferior, that's not my problem." Eli stood beside me, silent but steady, his hand resting lightly on my back. I turned to leave. Then I heard my mother's voice, soft, shaking. "Bonnie." I paused at the doorway. "I love you, Mom," I said, still not turning around. "But I'm done playing the fool." And I walked out of that living room, and out of the role they had always cast me in. The nice sister, the obedient one, the one who sacrifices and stays quiet to keep the peace. Not anymore, because people who survive off of someone else's kindness rarely let go willingly, and I was done being their supply. 3 weeks passed, no messages, no calls. For a moment, I let myself believe the storm had passed, until that Friday night. Eli and I were at a friend's dinner party when I got a text from Brandon, the property manager I'd hired to oversee the cabin. 3 words. "They got in." I stepped outside as he called. His voice was tight. "I just got an alert from the gate camera. 2 men broke the chain lock with bolt cutters. They went through the back door. I saw them on the security feed. It's Jason and Mark." I couldn't breathe. My skin burned. My fingers went numb. We left the party immediately. Eli drove in silence while I stared out the window, a storm of rage building in my chest. The next morning, I got the call from the Summit County Sheriff's Office. Jason and Mark were caught on site, attempting to disable the cabin's interior cameras, charged with trespassing, property damage, and criminal intimidation. I reviewed the footage, Jason cutting the gate, Mark breaking the door, both of them walking in like they owned the place. At one point, Mark looked straight into the lens and flipped it off. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was deliberate, and it was war. I wasn't just going to protect my property. I was going to protect my peace. With everything I had, I pressed charges, I hired a lawyer, and for once, I didn't feel like I was overreacting. I felt free. Jason and Mark eventually settled. They paid for the damages, signed a no-contact agreement, and stayed out of court. It wasn't justice, but it was enough. I sold the cabin a month later. Not because I needed the money, but because I refused to let it become a monument to betrayal. Eli and I moved forward. We traveled, we read, we built a life on our terms. No more fake apologies, no more letters laced with guilt. My mother still calls sometimes. She talks about her garden, new recipes she's trying. She never mentions Harper, never says Tina's name. And maybe that silence is her apology. But I don't need it anymore. I've learned something no one taught me growing up. Kindness must have boundaries, and love should never come with a price tag. If Bonnie's story spoke to you, if you've ever had to walk away from the people who hurt you the most, leave a comment below. Share your experience, your thoughts, or simply say, "I understand." And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful, true-to-life stories about family, boundaries, and finding peace. You're not alone, not anymore.